Welcome back to the Now What podcast, a podcast focused on young adults, epilepsy, and the problems they face. I'm Karan.
And I'm Sophie, and we are advisors to the Cameron Boys Foundation. If you don't already know, TCBF honors the legacy of our best friend Cameron by aiming to cure epilepsy through funding research, education, and awareness campaigns, while still supporting causes that were important to Cameron.
As always, these episodes wouldn't be possible without our amazing sponsor, UCB. UCB, thanks for making these conversations happen. Each week, we're going to discuss an important topic related to epilepsy and young adults, and this week, we're covering dating, relationships, and intimacy when you have epilepsy.
With that being said, let's welcome our guests for this week. They are all on our community advisory board at the foundation and have been such a huge help to all of us. So, welcome Maxine Tewsley, who's 22, Katie Price, who is 23, and Mia Randall, who is 25. This was a really fun conversation. I think dating is a crazy world, whether you're in a relationship or you're single. And yeah, I think hearing from all of their different perspectives was really fun. And I think there were so many relatable things, not only for people with epilepsy, like dating problems are universal to some extent. And it was interesting to hear how epilepsy has kind of amplified that for them and how they've navigated it. Hi guys, welcome. Just to kick us off, I think, let's just start out like what's everybody's dating status, relationship, situationship, where are we kind of at right now before we jump into sort of the ins and outs of the past?
Right now, I'm single, but my last relationship was a very serious long-term relationship. So that's kind of my status.
I've been dating my partner for almost 4 years. We reconnected after dating in high school, and we actually broke up in high school after my epilepsy diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So I was the one who did the breaking up. I was really overwhelmed with, kind of new chapter in life. And I didn't want to put that burden on him, even though I know now he can handle it. And so we dated temporarily in high school for a couple months, broke up after my diagnosis, and then found our way back to each other and have now been together for almost 4 years.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, I'm definitely going to ask you more about that, but Katie, you want to give us?
I've been with my boyfriend for 4.5 years, coming up to 5 years. We met just after we both finished high school. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got a little bit of a mix here. This is fantastic.
I would love to know first, to go in like kind of chronological order, like what's that, those early dates look like? And like, did you guys have to navigate, like when do you first tell someone about your diagnosis? And I know like Maxine, you had mentioned, you and your partner reconnecting, and me, I know you've lived with epilepsy for quite some time. I'm curious we've all been on one or two bad online dates. How do you figure out, when do I bring this up? Is this appropriate on a first date? Have you created a rule? Like, is it a second or third date conversation? Yeah.
I kind of personally, I know some people don't feel comfortable talking about it until they know they fully trust the person. But I kind of go by telling the person on the first or second date, kind of for two reasons. One, I just think safety. Just, if you have a seizure, then they know, especially people who have grand mal seizures, you tell them your seizure plan, like just for your own safety, or if you're staying the night for the date, especially if you're staying the night, they really do need to know. And then two, it kind of helps me gauge like if their reaction, if there are any red flags. Obviously, don't, cut them off immediately if they have a poor reaction. People can be shocked, or if they've never really dealt with epilepsy before, they might not know how to handle it. But if they have like a particularly bad reaction, then maybe you want to reevaluate if this is someone you would want to be with long term. So I kind of like to do it early in the dating process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think so in between the time my partner and I were split up, I went on a couple of dates, and I'm the kind of person who is comfortable telling anyone who will listen about my epilepsy. I know not everybody's like that. And so I kind of felt the same way, Mia, where I will just share, especially I have grand mal seizures too. So I don't want to go on a date and them not know what to do if I need help. So that was kind of my go-to and game plan. But I know not everybody is like that.
Katie, you've been with your partner for a while as well, but in your experience, would you recommend talking about it sooner? When were you diagnosed compared to when you started dating your boyfriend?
So I was first diagnosed with absent seizures in 2013.
Okay.
So typically with absent seizures, you grow out of them while being on medication. So I grew out of it by my 15th birthday, and I thought my epilepsy had stopped miraculously. Like I just thought that was it. Um, and then I met my boyfriend when I was 18, and I had told him that I used to have absent seizures. I've never had a grand mal seizure. And then, so he knew about that. And then, unfortunately, I had a grand mal seizure. And it was a big shock to him because he was the only person with me when it happened. So, yeah, he was just like, even after that, he was just like, you didn't tell me you had epilepsy. And I was like, well, I thought like it was gone. Like I thought it was the end
Yeah.
of it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like you all sort of touched on the fact that it can be some people are more nervous to disclose it, which I do totally get. But I think I get what Mia was saying, especially about it sort of being a kind of a litmus test early on to just be like, not necessarily that they have to be super informed, but how much does it make them like clam up and not ask any questions about it and move on to the next thing? Because it's important for all of your safety. And yeah, I mean, that is tough though.
Yeah, and it sounds like for you guys, your navigating your diagnosis has also led you to be like more vulnerable, like early on. And I'm like curious, has that been kind of has that helped your dating life just to like be upfront? Because I mean, Soph knows this. You can ask me two questions and I will just like tell you my life story. I'm like, honestly, let's just go back to day one. And it
Yeah.
doesn't take much for me to like lay it out all on the table. But even me, like, I've had to navigate being like, maybe I can save this for the second date. Or like, there's a line between overloading and like, vulnerability that connects you.
Yeah, definitely. I think I relate to the oversharing and like wanting to trauma bond with people. I think I do that too much, and I'm like, okay, they don't know me that well yet. I can hold back, but I know a lot of people aren't like me, and what I've kind of told people who've come to me who are like recently diagnosed and don't really know how to approach people, I've told them there are actually like a lot of easy ways to work into a conversation because you can think like I'm on a date. How am I supposed to just be like, oh, by the way, I have epilepsy? Like, there's a lot of like, so for instance, like you can have a date. Lots of dates are at bars, and a lot of people with epilepsy can't drink. So when you order a soda, and they're like, "Oh, like, do you want to drink?" Be like, "Oh, I'm actually gonna have a soda. Like, I can't drink. I'm on, an anticonvulsant," and like ease into the conversation that way. Or ask them like, "Hey, can you pick me up for the date? I actually can't drive. Like, I have epilepsy." Like, there's so many easy ways you can just bring it into the conversation without making like such an awkward huge jump to where all of a sudden they're like, whoa, you're being like super vulnerable and like sharing a lot with me right now. Like, just find a way to bring it into the conversation naturally, and also then you don't have to share like a ton. You can just be like, oh yeah, like I have epilepsy, that's why I'm not doing this, or like, could you help me with this, or whatever. And then you don't have to overshare, but you let them know. And then if it is a safety thing, then share with them your seizure plan as well.
That's wise. Like a removal of the emotional weight of it can also help you not feel like you're jumping to date 5 before you've like, which also, I mean, I've done the online dating thing. Like I've done it. I've been on like a lot of random dates. So I totally understand the feelings of like the early first dates and stuff it's an interesting place to be. And to sort of do that introduction. I'm curious, Maxine, like when you were diagnosed, obviously that's really overwhelming. Obviously I totally get like taking sort of your independent stance. But if you're comfortable sharing with us a little bit how that conversation went with your partner at the time and how you sort of evolved back together, I would love to just kind of hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like never showed any signs of epilepsy. I didn't even really know what it was. And I woke up one morning, I was a senior in high school and was getting ready and had a seizure, and my mom freaked out. She didn't really know what epilepsy was. Went to the hospital, got an EEG, got diagnosed. And I was just talking to my mom before this. I'm like, I don't even really know how my partner found out like that I had a seizure, because we had only been dating for a couple months and it wasn't really on the top of my mom's to-do list to let him know. And I live in a small town and everybody knows where everybody lives, and everybody was driving to school and there are ambulances outside. So somehow he found out. And over the next couple of weeks, I got on my medicine. I went on Keppra, and I was not very nice. I think it was just the way I reacted to the Keppra. You can ask any of my friends or family. Those first 2 months, I was really struggling. I wasn't myself. And it was also a really busy season of life. It was the end of my senior year. I had academics were busy, extracurriculars were busy. And I just was feeling really vulnerable, really anxious. And I didn't really know how to manage that myself, let alone manage a relationship. And so I thought that was the best thing to do, was to end that relationship and take some time for myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't really consider in that moment how that would impact him. I don't think I had the capacity or bandwidth to understand, like, oh, maybe he actually could be a part of this decision, or maybe he wants to stay and like wants to help. I just kind of made that decision on my own, highly medicated, not used to my medicine yet. But I'd say he took it well. I mean, he was sad, and I was sad. I didn't want to end it because I didn't care for him. I probably wanted to end it more because I did care for him. And we remained what I would say awkward friends. We waved to each other. We had classes together. We had to do a group project together. Our Spanish teacher, we had Spanish together. He made us stay in groups together for the rest of the year. I was like, dude. Yeah.
Like so high school, like also the
so high school.
The drama.
Right. And then I think once we started to talk again, like it was during the pandemic, we kind of reconnected. We're catching up. We had an opportunity to really, we were texting and FaceTiming to really kind of discuss like what went through my head. I was finally able to understand why I made that choice. Like a year and a half later, I was now used to my medication and fully understanding what it was like to live with my diagnosis. And I think that helped him better understand the choice that I made and why I made it and when I made it. And he's truly a great partner, and I admire him because he never holds it against me, never holds it over my head. And I'm petty, so I probably would if I were in this spot. But I think that's something that I really admire about him and why he's a good partner. And like I said, I know now that if I let him maybe be a part of that conversation and didn't just be like, oh, it's a morning and I'm gonna break up with Isaac because my Keppra is ruling my life right now. Maybe things would be different, but I am glad that we found our way back to each other and were able to have those really honest conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so fair. Anytime anyone goes through like a really major life change and then you add the medicine on top of it that's having side effects, like I think it's completely understandable why that was your initial reaction. And I think for a lot of people, that is the response to a medical problem, is to feel like a fear of burdening other people. And that sucks. And that's part of why we're here, is to talk about how that can be like people do, I ultimately think, want to help. And I like to believe that about people, that at the end of the day, when you're willing to be open and communicative, people, unless they are terrible, which like Mia said, you'll learn really fast, they in general are going to want to try to be there for you. And that's so hard, I think, especially with something as personal as epilepsy.
Katie, did you make your care plan with your boyfriend in mind, or did you kind of like take a step back and be like, I'm going to figure out what I need right now, and then I might kind of integrate you into that?
So the thing is, because I grew out of my first initial diagnosis, I had my grand mal seizure about 5 months into him and I dating. And we never really discussed it. My sister also has epilepsy, so he knew when she would have seizures. He knew what the general gist was. But when I had my seizure, I was just at his house and it was him, myself and his dad. And the only way he knew what to do was because he's seen people on like TV shows and movies have seizures and how they do first aid. And that's really crazy that that's the only way he knew what to do in this situation. It was really hard because, as Maxine said, going on Kepra is not an easy journey. So it was just sort of about finding a balance. Like this year was massive for me. I just graduated high school, so I was navigating a full-time new job, navigating my first like relationship, and I also have this diagnosis. So from there, it sort of became a what now? Where do we go from here? There was constant appointments. I couldn't drive for 6 months, which really sucked because I was an extremely independent person. Like I would go everywhere by myself, and then now having to rely on him and my parents sort of just like was a bit of a kick in the gut. But I feel like we've spoken about this, and you know, I even said, okay, in this situation you need to do this. This is how you would approach it. I said, I've been medicated for nearly 3.5 years now. I said, if it happens again and you know for a fact I have taken my medication, you just call an ambulance. But yeah, it was just really weird, and especially his dad being there, it was a bit of an icebreaker considering, you know, I haven't met his dad that often, and he walks in to find me on the floor. Probably not really a great first impression, but he understood after. It was really caring. So yeah, it was just about the open communication afterwards, just being like, hey, look, you know, I'm sorry the way I'm reacting. It's all new to me, and he was completely understanding of that. And then from there, he was really on edge with everything, and especially with those epilepsy myths, like, you know, flashing lights can cause seizures. That's not my trigger personally, but, you know, a light would flicker in his room and he'll cover my eyes. He'd be like, no. And it's like, yeah, so it's just about open communication, and like, that's what our relationship's really heavily based around. But yeah, he's been amazing, and his family's been great with helping me navigate it, especially when I'm at his house. But yeah.
Just really quickly onto what Katie said about it being an icebreaker with his dad. I think one of my best tips with epilepsy and dating is turning it into humor and being able to laugh at your epilepsy. I know, especially if you've just been diagnosed, that can be so hard. But something that has been so healing for me has been being able to joke about it with my friends and laugh about it. And to people who don't have epilepsy, that may sound terrible. Like that may, yes. But people who have it understand. And because when you're dating, there are going to be so many embarrassing moments, and, you know, you're going to be with your boyfriend or girlfriend's friends, and like something embarrassing is going to happen, or with their parents, and that might be the first time you've met their parents, and like just awkward, embarrassing things are going to happen as a result to your epilepsy. And if you can laugh about it and make everyone else feel comfortable because you see it as a joke and it's funny, and like you don't make them feel like, oh, something serious and medical and it's awkward going on. If it just becomes a funny joke, we're all friends, it's all fine. Like, don't worry, guys. I mean, obviously, if an ambulance needs to be involved, don't be like, haha, don't worry, guys. Like, okay. But, after the fact, then you can laugh and it can be funny. And once you're okay and you're safe and you're fine, then you can be like, guys, remember that time I left an ambulance? Like, just make it, you know, see it with some dark humor. Like, dark humor is the best humor, and just turn it into that, and it'll make all those awkward, embarrassing moments so much better. And it can be an inside joke. And it's just, that's been so helpful for me with friendships and with dating.
I think there's something to giving other people permission to laugh and feel like it normalizes it, because we all cope with like our problems with humor. And I think sometimes giving people permission to like be normal and not be so afraid of everything they say is, you know, I imagine helpful. That's a good point.
My friends and my boyfriend's favorite jokes were getting to make seizure jokes with me, because they thought it was so fun to do it with me. They loved getting to make seizure jokes with me. Obviously, they would never do it to someone else or in an inappropriate situation.
Or let someone that you don't know do it.
Exactly, but with me, and they got to do it with me, and it would be so much fun, and we all had fun together with it, opposed to make me wallowing in my sadness and depression about having seizures and not getting to do stuff that they got to do. It was like so much fun making seizure jokes together. Like, it's fine.
I'm curious, like, is there anything for all of you that have been in relationships that you feel like your partners have really helped you with on your epilepsy journey? Is there something that you're like, this is an important part of, like, it's been helpful with your illness, your care, like what in any aspect?
I think for me, it was just the emotional support and the mental support. Obviously, receiving a new diagnosis, or just a diagnosis in general, is a lot to navigate. And as Mia said, you always have to find the lighthearted moments, and that's how you cope. And the biggest thing for me was that emotional support. You know, every single time I came back from the specialist, I also had a bit of like a bad experience with my specialist where he told me I couldn't have kids, which was completely debunked by a lot of other medical professionals. But hearing that when you're in a new relationship where you've already may have discussed getting married and having kids is sort of like, oh, okay. So then I had to have that awkward conversation with him. And I'm so blessed that he was really like, no, like we'll figure it out when the time comes. And yeah, he's just a big believer in whatever happens in your life happens for a reason. And although this isn't what you would expect to happen, you know, you come out stronger than you were the day before. So
I love it. To more of like the fun aspects of life and dating. Does anyone want to speak at all to like sex and epilepsy? Any like misconceptions? How has that been with your partners? Like,
You know, as a society, we've been talking a lot about consent or just, you know, communicating with your partner about what you like, what you don't like. But I'm sure there's another added layer with the diagnosis about having, you know, these conversations. Like, what's that been like?
A conversation that I think is super important for people with epilepsy, like super, super important, is if you're on lamotrigine or it's also can be called Lamictal, which is one of the most common epilepsy medications. You can't take the birth control pill. They counteract each other. So your OBGYN may not know that, and she might just prescribe you the pill if you're younger, or if you haven't talked to someone about that. And then your pill won't work and your epilepsy medication won't work. So could start having seizures, and you could also be having unsafe sex. So you need to find a birth control that will work for you, whether that be an IUD or, you know, one of the like arm implants, like something you like work with your like OBGYN and with your neurologist and find something that works for you, so you're not jeopardizing your epilepsy medication and you're not having unsafe sex, because like that's huge. And a lot of OBGYNs do not know that. And so, yeah. And I understand that's uncomfortable to talk about with your parents or with your neurologist, who is not someone you would normally talk about that with, but like that's so important. So yeah.
Yeah. Adding on to that, we noticed like a couple seizures in that my seizures were occurring when I was on my period. And once we noticed that, we were like, okay, so maybe we should stop having periods. So I started taking my birth control consecutively with no sugar pill. And I asked my neurologist, can I switch to an IUD so I don't have to take a pill and worry about missing a pill and then being on my period, because an IUD tends to stop the period. And one neurologist said no, because something about the hormones not regulating right. And then my gynecologist said something different, and my other neurologist said something different. And so I think it's also really interesting to see how, kind of like you said, the difference between what your neurologist says, what your gynecologist said, and then that added burden on you of making sure you're aware of what your birth control is and the impact that has on you. Not only for me is it like a birth control, but also it does manage and help regulate my seizures. So that's been something really interesting that I've tried to navigate. And my new neurologist now says, get an IUD. That's my saying. So I feel like maybe that's something I'm going to try. There's always a risk, but so I think that's really interesting and something that we all seem to go through too.
To go off of that, I had to like navigate this completely on my own. I don't have parents who are super open to talk about that. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And so actually there's like the copper IUD and then the hormonal IUDs. And so I spoke with my gyno and my neurologist and did a lot of research, and the hormonal IUDs, because a lot of people, hormones can spike their seizures, like Maxine said. Your period can spike it, hormones can spike it. That's why like pregnancy can be dangerous. The hormonal IUDs, I was like freaked out because they told me I can't have a copper IUD. So like, oh, go on the hormonal one. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm nervous. I already have seizures. I don't want to add hormones. The hormonal IUDs, at least in the US, I don't want to speak to any other countries and their healthcare there. In the US, yeah, I don't want to speak to, maybe Katie can speak on that, but the hormonal ones like Kylena and those ones, the hormones only stay like in like your uterus. Like they don't go through your body, through your bloodstream. So it will not affect, I don't want to go 100%. It should not be affecting your, it should. So like I have Kylena, I have a hormonal IUD. I've been on it for like 3 years. It hasn't changed my seizures. It's been great. I like it. My neurologist was very happy with it. My OBGYN is very happy with it. So just because it's like labeled hormonal, don't let that scare you away or freak you out. It's not like, yeah, I don't want people to be scared away, freaked out because of the title, because I was freaked out like at the beginning, and I like X'd it out, and then I researched more and I talked to more people, and they're like, no, it's not going to go all the way through your body and affect you that way.
There are so many different ways. It's like an overwhelming thing for literally any woman trying to look up. But then when you add epilepsy, and it is interesting how tied to your hormones it is. Like, that was something I learned more recently, and was like, that's crazy how, like you said, on your period you were getting more seizures. I'll be curious to hear if you do go the IUD route, if it helps. But is there any other like?
Yeah, just to speak on that topic quickly. Yeah, same with the girls. Like, depending on which neurologist or gynecologist you go to, you always get different answers. In Australia, I was recommended the implant, which is the rod that goes into your arm, and the IUD, and also the pill, but a really low dosage. But I was also told that it can interact with my Keppra medication. So the safest route for me was the rod in my arm, because I just didn't really feel the IUD. Just was something I was like, yeah, no, I just couldn't do it. But we're saying that my sister, who also has epilepsy, her male neurologist said, yeah, you can go on birth control. That's completely fine. It won't interact with your medication. 3 days into her being on that birth control, she had another seizure. So that just goes to show, you also, for anyone out there who does have epilepsy, who's looking to get on birth control, do your own research. It helps, even if you go to a neurologist or any type of specialist, it pays well to go to one who knows what they're talking about. Obviously, with financial times, I completely get that. Sometimes you just have to go with what's affordable for you or what you can capable of seeing or doing. But yeah, it's just, I pretty much have learned all this stuff myself. I do also have a male neurologist, and if it wasn't for my female gynecologist and my own research, I wouldn't know half of the stuff I have today. So
Yeah. It's amazing how much OBGYNs are inconsistent, like with their advice, place to place. And I think they get a particularly bad reputation for not always seeming like they care, which is an interesting one. But I feel like that is an extra when you add in the referring back to your neurologist. It is like having someone you can trust, and also that you can, especially when you're raised, if you're like not super comfortable talking about it, like unfortunately we do have to be vocal and advocate for ourselves in those kinds of situations, and like not being afraid to try to, talk to your doctors, because they are used to this, they do this, is a big thing.
Did your partners have any misconceptions about going into epilepsy as you guys are educating yourself? Like, did they have any misconceptions about epilepsy and intimacy that you kind of had to talk them through or navigate them through the conversation?
with me, I just felt like my partner, I was the first person he ever have seen have a seizure, or I was the first person he knew with epilepsy. And it was a bit hard, navigating the more intimate side of our relationship, because I was sort of treated like I was fragile, which really was hard because obviously it's a new relationship, it's a new experience for myself personally, and it puts that bit of a mental strain on you, being like, oh, okay, he can't even think we can make out because he feels like it's going to trigger a seizure,
Yeah.
And that was just the hardest thing, because then obviously I had that conversation with him and I was like, but obviously he just was looking out for my best interests. But by having that conversation with him, being like, no, like, I know my limits. I probably can feel when a seizure is coming on. I'm very vocal. I, can send even just communication throughout having those intimate moments when you're feeling well in any capacity, unwell in any capacity, being able to be like, hey, I need to stop. I'm not feeling well, whether that's seizure related or not, is really important. So my advice is just make sure you have open communication, even if it is just a first date. But you need to look out for number one, and that's you at the end of the day. So
I think on the complete flip side of that, you two sound like you have wonderful boyfriends.
Yeah, I'm
I
curious
do
about your
not have a great boyfriend.
Okay.
So maybe I can speak to that side for all the girls who haven't had great boyfriends.
I love
the
it.
girls
Bring
that
it.
have gotten
Yeah,
gaslit.
because you guys are speaking so highly of your boyfriends. They sound fantastic. But I know a lot of girls don't have great boyfriends,
Yeah.
myself included. So I have a lot of seizures in my sleep. And I think a lot of intimacy happens at nighttime. And I've been having seizures for a long time. I've been having seizures for oh my God, 15 years. 15 years. And so I know how to handle my seizures. So I come off quite strong when I have a seizure. I can handle it. I come off very resilient after my seizures, and that can get taken advantage of, I think. Well, I know. I'm not going to say I think. I know. Especially in a long-term relationship, with dates or one-night stands or whatever, they'll freak out if a seizure happens, and they're not going to do anything. They might even just leave. They'll just be like, oh, okay, I can't handle this, whatever. And you're like, okay, fine, bye. I don't really want to be with you anyways. But in a long-term relationship, once they learn and see that you can take care of yourself and you can handle yourself, and you're not going to, like Katie said, be fragile and fall apart on the floor, then that can be taken advantage of, and be like, okay, well, you said you're fine after you have a seizure. You don't have to go to the hospital. You don't have to lay down with a glass of water and mope around. So why can't we have sex? Why can't we do this? It's nighttime. It's time for that. We haven't done it in a couple of days. And it's like, okay, well, just because I can take care of myself and just because I'm, resilient after a seizure doesn't mean I didn't just have a seizure and my body didn't go through something quite difficult and exhausting. I'm still tired. Just because I'm for me, I'm okay. If your body was experiencing it, you wouldn't feel okay. I'm just used to it. It's the whole people who don't get fatigued or have chronic fatigue, they don't understand how tired you are. It's when they're like, oh, I'm tired too. It's like, okay, well, you may be tired, but I'm so tired. You don't understand. There's such a difference between me being okay and being okay. Yes, I'm okay for my seizure. I don't need to go to the hospital, but that doesn't mean I'm okay. That doesn't mean my body doesn't need to rest, or my brain needs to rest, or I'm not okay to just have sex right now because I don't need to go to the hospital. So I feel you can really be taken advantage of when you show that you're strong, because it's well, you're fine. Just because you're strong doesn't mean you have to let people take advantage of you. I think.
Totally.
And I've learned that, and then it did take a while to also stand up for yourself and set boundaries for yourself.
I think it goes back to and a lot of people have that issue in relationships of feeling the obligation to have sex or whatever it may be, even if it's not always ill-intended. That one sounds pretty ill-intended to me, because if somebody had a seizure and was I'm physically tired, first of all, that physical exhaustion can put you at more risk for another seizure. But it is, I think it can sometimes take age too. And I feel when people in young relationships, I hope they hear that, because you do like finding the strength to like stand up for yourself and be like, no. And then also no one should be treating you like that anyway. That's so
And you
messed
don't
up.
owe anyone anything. Like,
Yes.
there are points that people with epilepsy can have, bad immune systems, like myself. So I'd be sick a lot. So I'd be like, well, we haven't, had sex in 2 weeks because you're sick. So like, why can't we have it now? Like, you're not sick anymore. It's like, I think people with epilepsy experience that a lot where they're, sick a lot or they're in the hospital. So maybe your sex life is taking a back seat.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you owe them sex just because of that. Like all relationships have sacrifices and just, I'm sure you're making sacrifices for your partner. And just because they have to make that sacrifice doesn't mean you don't bring other great things to the table. Like all relationships have give and take. This is just one of those takes. Like don't make them feel guilty. Don't let them make you feel guilty or that you owe them something because you don't, especially sex. You don't owe them sex. And like boys, like anyway, find a different boy. Like it's fine. Or girl, like girls can be doing that too. If anyone's doing that to you, then they
Me is that I'm an ally. I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. Like it is relationships are give and take, and it's important for people who have epilepsy. Like we have to, you guys having this conversation is so important to remind people like this is just one of those give and takes. It's like, yes, it's a special circumstance, but it's not something to be ashamed of or feel like extra bad about it within your relationship.
I want to be careful about how I say this, but like similarly to you, Mia, there was a not a long-term relationship, but I don't even know what to call it, a moment,
Situationship.
In between the times when my partner and I were split up. And I'd like to think that this person knew me really well and understood the nuance of and I honestly, they probably did, this person, understood. They were with me through my diagnosis, sat with me through some of those really hard moments. And then it got to a point where I think they took advantage of like those weaknesses. And I think that's really crappy that like people do that. And so that really made me kind of closed off for a while and like scared to go back out and like date other people. And I hate that might be a truth for other people who live with epilepsy. And so I've kind of built up like a really, really strong, like if I am tired tonight, no, I'm going to bed. Or, and I mean, I trust my partner with my life. But it's sad that that's a truth that even if they don't understand the nuances, like it's hard that we have to explain that. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. I don't know if I said that.
Yeah.
That
No,
was
you did.
really well said.
No, you did. Yeah. I'm curious, like, as far as early dates, I know you mentioned like spending the night places and stuff is like, especially having seizures in your sleep. Has that been exceptionally hard for you with like early on relationships too?
Yeah. So something that's big is like so you always have to pack your medication, even if you don't expect to spend the night with someone. Always have your medication with you. Always keep it in your purse. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going on this date, but I'm not going to be spending the night with them. I'm not even that interested with them. Bring your medication because you might. Who knows? Maybe it goes really well. And if you end up at their place and you don't have your medication, like, do not put yourself in that situation ever. It's just in case. Just always have it just in case. I mean, I keep my medication in my purse all the time, no matter where I go, because you never know if you're going to get stuck somewhere. I always have extra medication in my purse just for safety. But especially if you're going on a date, just bring your medication. You don't want to be stuck at someone's place without medication. If you have emergency seizure medication, bring your emergency seizure medication. I have, I don't know where it is. I have, here it is. I feel like a lot of people should get these, especially if they're going on first dates. I have like a medical ID bracelet, and like on the inside, it has like my name, who to call, like what to do. So it says like lay on side, do not distrain, and then like who to call. And so that can be really helpful if you're someone going on a lot of first dates, because then like it's quite obvious it's a medical ID bracelet. And then if they call the ambulance can do that, because I don't really trust many boys to like know that over and see that that's what they should do. But if they call the ambulance will always look for one of these, and they can see that's who they should call and whatever. So I feel like medical ID bracelets are really important if you're going to be with strangers a lot. So
yeah, as someone who also dates men, I can confirm men are stupid.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel feel bad like talking smack with Karan right there.
No, don't. I have a lot of female friends, and I've never felt more connected to them when I recently, for the very first time, got gaslit by a man. And I was like, this is what you've all been going through.
You're like, I
rocked
understand
my
now.
world, and all the women in my life were like, yeah, welcome to the club, buddy.
Yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah, we're like, we have 4 playlists for you. Enjoy. No, that is a great advice.
I was gonna ask, have you guys had any funny moments you can share when it comes to dating?
My boyfriend has never seen me have a seizure. We did long distance in college, and most of my seizures happened when I was away at school. Most of them happened at night. One time we were on FaceTime and I felt one coming on and I said, I gotta go, and hung up, but that's kind of as close as it's gotten. The couple times I did have them when I was home I've been 2 years seizure free now, knock on wood. But the couple times I have had them, we, weren't together, when we were, home for the summer or whatever. And, I had one night, he came over the following day, and we had been really wanting to watch Ted Lasso, and it was summer, and we're like, oh, we'll start it soon. And my dad and my boyfriend both really, really enjoy soccer. And I, after a seizure, just sleep for like 2 days straight. And I was like, no, we're going to start Ted Lasso today. Like, because I kind of get a little wacky after a seizure. And so I go down to the couch all like committed to watch this show, even though I know I was about to pass out for like 4 hours. And they turn on Ted Lasso and I immediately zonk out for the first 3 episodes. And I wake up and I realize that they are still watching Ted Lasso. And I like looked around like all confused and I found the remote and I turned it off and I went right back to sleep. And they were like, oh my gosh. And that was kind of the closest to like a post-ictal he's seen me. And he was like, girl, what? So that's my favorite.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. So we did eventually watch Ted Lasso and I enjoyed it. But that was a good one. That was a good one.
I have one where this was the first time. Okay, I was with my ex-boyfriend. First, I'd never seen a horror movie before. And he's like, we have to watch a horror movie, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. So we watched The Conjuring. And like the little girl gets possessed, right? So she gets possessed. So I'm like, okay, like I actually liked it. That was good. Maybe I like horror movies. So then we go to bed and go upstairs, go to bed. And so I have like grand mal seizures in my sleep. And sometimes my grand mal seizures, like I will hallucinate during them. Like that happens to some people. So I'm having the seizure and I'm hallucinating that I'm being possessed. I'm the little girl in The Conjuring being possessed. So I don't even think I'm having a seizure. I think I'm being possessed by a demon. So I'm in the bed, like thinking I'm being possessed. I'm like screaming. I'm like, the demon! And I'm like thinking I'm being possessed. And he's like on the other side of the bed, like freaking out. He thinks I'm possessed because I think I'm possessed. And I'm like literally going, because I like whip around the bed.
Every epilepsy myth come true. Everyone,
I look like I'm possessed. Like my sister for a long time thought we should have like have an exorcism done on me. I'm like going around the bed like, and then I like wake up and I'm like, oh my god, I was possessed. And he was like, and then we're like turning on the lights, and I was like, oh wait, I'm pretty sure I had a seizure. It's fine. And he was like, what do you mean it's fine? I'm like, go back to bed. It's okay. And I literally turned off the lights, like laid on my side, put the covers over, and then like went back to sleep. And he was like, I was like, okay. I woke up and he was like, do you remember any of that? And I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no. I was like, what do you mean? Nothing happened last night.
You're like, psych, I have epilepsy, remember? Oh, wow.
So just when I did have my seizure in front, when we were talking about like meeting my boyfriend's dad for the first time, the icebreaker, for those who don't know, sometimes when you have grand mal seizures, your bladder may release. So I ended up weeing myself. Not only did I do that, as they were picking me up and taking me, because they moved me to the lounge room because my boyfriend's room was really messy. So his dad said to him, my boyfriend's Middle Eastern, and his dad walked in and looked at his room and was like, what is this? Like, we're taking her out. And as I was walking out, I was obviously really unwell and I really need to throw up. So I have my boyfriend's dad on this side, I had my boyfriend on this side, and I didn't want to vomit on their floors. So I was like, my head was more closer to his dad's side, and all I could think was, this impression's not good. I can't do this. I can't do this to this poor man. Thankfully, my boyfriend had taken his shirt off to put it under my head, so he was wearing no shirt. So my head just went all down him. And to this day, he will not let me live it down. He will say, hey, remember that time you vomited on me? I was like, yeah, remember that time I was having a seizure? I remember that too. But, like, it's just, like, stories like that. And, like, that was actually my boyfriend's also first time meeting my parents, because he knew my sister had epilepsy. So the first thing he did was just call my parents. He was just like, Katie's having a seizure, I don't know what to do. Thankfully, we live 5 minutes away, so my parents got changed. They drove up. And they walked in really like, oh, hey, how's it going? Like, they have an epileptic daughter. So they're like, yeah, she'll be fine. Like, I was sort of paying to it at this point. And my boyfriend's just sitting there with vomit on him being like, hey, I'm Isaac. It's really nice to meet you guys. So, you know what?
My God.
5 years later and he stayed. So if that doesn't say that he loves me, then...
Yeah, true.
That's amazing.
Okay, this is a final sort of two-parter question for you guys. First of all, for somebody who doesn't have epilepsy, if they're on a first date or second date with somebody and they disclose that they have epilepsy, like, what is sort of the ideal response reaction that you want? Is it follow-up questions? Is it just like, okay, move on? So that's part A, if you want to answer that. Or what is, for someone entering into a relationship with someone with epilepsy, like a newer relationship, what is the number one thing that you would want them to know on, like, how to support their partner?
I can take part A, because you guys are in like great deep relationships, so maybe you should take how to support a partner. I would say personally, I think a great response would be something along the lines of like, okay, cool, and what does that mean for you? Because I feel like a lot of the initial responses are them pushing the myths or stereotypes immediately onto you, being like, oh my God, like, aren't there going to be flashing lights in here? Or like, oh, we're at a club. Like, are you going to be triggered? Like, they automatically start pushing myths onto you or pushing stereotypes onto you, or like and then it's like, no, just ask me what it means for me, what it's like for me, or the even better, maybe not even better, but, or it can be a two-part and also say like, what does that mean for you? And do you need me to do anything? So then two-part, show that you care to know and learn about their life and what it means for the person with epilepsy, and you care to know what it would mean for you in the relationship and how you can help them if there's something they need you to do for them. And so it's just like, without pushing anything onto them, just listening and show you care. I think that's probably, and it doesn't get too deep then if it's on a first date. You don't have to get all emotional about it because some people feel vulnerable.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to word it. Like, what does that mean for you? I love that.
Yeah. What does it mean for you, and what is that? Do you need anything from me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like what advice I would give to a person entering a relationship with someone with epilepsy is kind of what Mia said, like being willing to learn not only about epilepsy and first aid and triggers and all that kind of stuff, but how that specific person manages their epilepsy physically, emotionally, how they feel comfortable, who they feel comfortable sharing with, if they're comfortable joking about it or not, because like the same way I handle the things might be different from the way Mia or Katie. There's not a really epilepsy 101 guidebook. And so like, yeah, I like when my partner makes epilepsy jokes, but not when I'm really cranky and having a bad day and I don't want to hear it then. And, so kind of really finding those nuances, learning like, oh, after an appointment, like, what do you need? Do you want to talk about it, or do you want to take some time and like you bring it up? If you've had a seizure, how can I care for you in that aftermath? Would you like to be alone, or would you like me to come and spend time with you? I think things like that are really important, things that I've found in my relationship that have really helped me trust my partner and kind of let him into this really vulnerable part of my life.
Yeah, pretty much just what Maxine said. I just always say that at the end of the day, I'm still human. I'm the same as everyone else. I might just have a bit more extra spice, which I call my epilepsy. And it's really important that when you're in a relationship with someone, you love them for them, and you take what comes along with that. And that's just the most important part. And it's really great to have your own knowledge. Like it takes not even 2 minutes to Google search your local or your country's policies and resources on epilepsy. So like in Australia, we have Epilepsy Australia, and they have so many great resources surrounding first dates, surrounding epilepsy management for all different types of seizures. And it's really a helpful tool because not only do you have that, you have actual facts to back you up, but you also have communication between you and your partner. So yeah, that's just really.
Yeah, that's great. I think my biggest takeaway has been like, as somebody who doesn't have epilepsy, to date somebody with it, it's like not being afraid to ask them questions like a normal person, coming at it from like an educated place, like Katie said, so that you know the right kinds of questions to ask. But I think epilepsy is so individual, and it seems like at the end of the day, it comes down to just being there and talking to your partner openly, which is hard to do sometimes for everybody. So thank you guys for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. Where can people find you? On Instagram or any kind of social media?
On Instagram, you can find me at Mia_Randall. It's just the same as my name here with an underscore.
On Instagram, I'm Maxine.Tewsley.
On Instagram, I'm Katie Price with 2 E's at the end and an underscore.
Amazing. Well, before we close out this episode, I want to thank our amazing sponsor, UCB, once again for making episodes like this happen. If you're listening, you enjoyed what you heard, you can check out thecameronboycefoundation.org for more resources. And you can check us out on social media, Facebook and Instagram at the Cameron Boyce Foundation, where you can join the conversation, talk to people, get to know people. We also have support groups on Facebook. You should check them out, where you might run into these 3 amazing people. Thanks for joining us for this episode, and we'll see you at the next one.
Good luck on the dating apps.
Yeah.